Dad. The single word slipped from the lips of a scruffy 12-year-old boy, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. On the busy sidewalks of downtown, people bustled around, rushing to offices, shops, and meetings. No one noticed the boy, skinny, wearing a torn hoodie, clutching a worn-out backpack. No one. Except the man he had just spoken to. The man froze in place. He was tall, dressed in a sharp navy suit, and carried the air of someone important. His expensive watch glinted under the sunlight. He turned slowly, brows furrowed, staring at the boy who had dared call him Dad. The boy's name was Ethan, and for years he had lived on the streets with his mother until she passed away. All she left him with were two things: a photo of a younger version of the man standing in front of him, and a single whispered truth. Your father is out there. One day you'll find him. And now, standing in the heart of the city, Ethan was certain he had found him. The man stared for a moment before shaking his head. I don't know you, kid. You must be mistaken. His voice was cold, clipped, like someone who had no time for nonsense. But Ethan refused to back down. He pulled the photo from his backpack and shoved it forward with trembling hands. It's you. Look, this was you years ago. Mom said your name was Richard Grant. The man's eyes flickered, just for a second. That was indeed his name. But he quickly hid his shock behind a mask of indifference. Plenty of people look alike. Stop wasting my time. He turned to walk away, but Ethan's voice cracked through the air. You're my dad. Why did you leave us? Passers-by began to slow down, watching the confrontation. Richard felt the weight of curious stares. His reputation mattered. He was the CEO of Grant Enterprises, a billion-dollar corporation. He couldn't afford scandals, not with reporters lurking everywhere. Still, for the first time in years, his polished composure faltered. Because deep down, he remembered a woman he once loved and a child he had never met. Richard had once been a struggling young man in love with a woman named Clara, Ethan's mother. They had shared dreams, laughter, and plans for the future. But when Richard's ambitions grew and he was offered a chance to climb the corporate ladder, he made a choice: wealth and success over love and family. He convinced himself Clara and the child would be better off without him. He thought they'd manage. He thought money and power would silence the guilt. But now the child stood before him, hungry, barefoot, and staring at him with the same eyes Clara once had. Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. Mom said you left because we weren't good enough for your world. Is that true? Richard's chest tightened. His carefully built empire, his millions of dollars, his luxurious penthouse, all suddenly felt empty compared to the question of a boy he had abandoned. Richard's first instinct was to push Ethan away again. His pride screamed at him, don't get involved. Don't let this ruin everything you've built. But then Ethan's stomach growled loudly, catching the attention of everyone nearby. The boy flushed red with embarrassment, clutching his backpack tighter as if it could hide his hunger. A woman in the crowd muttered, if that's really his son, how could he let him suffer like this? Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years: shame. The eyes of strangers weren't what cut him. It was Ethan's eyes, filled with both pain and hope, refusing to let go. Come with me, Richard finally said, his voice softer this time. Ethan hesitated, unsure if it was another rejection disguised as kindness. But something in his father's tone told him it was different. They went to a nearby diner. For the first time in his life, Ethan sat across from his father, eating a warm meal. Between bites of food, Ethan shared stories of sleeping in shelters, working odd jobs for scraps, and clutching the photo of Richard every night for comfort. Richard sat in silence, every word cutting deeper than any corporate battle he had ever fought. He realized that while he had built skyscrapers of glass and steel, he had abandoned the only foundation that truly mattered: his own blood. After the meal, Richard drove Ethan to his penthouse. The boy's eyes widened as they entered: golden chandeliers, marble floors, endless windows overlooking the city. This is where you live?" Ethan asked in awe. Richard nodded, but suddenly felt no pride in his wealth. For years, he had lived in luxury while his son suffered on the streets. Richard knelt down, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. His voice trembled. "I was wrong. I thought success meant money, power, and reputation. But seeing you today, I realize I've been the poorest man alive." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. For the first time, he felt like maybe he wasn't invisible. Maybe he wasn't just another forgotten child. From that day forward, Richard made a vow. Ethan would never go hungry again. He would go to school, have a safe home, and most importantly, have a father who would never walk away again. The world would remember Richard Grant as a billionaire CEO. But Ethan? He would remember him as something far more important. Dad.